Hi, this is Steve Millard with the Greater Akron Chamber. Welcome to Advocacy in Action, a podcast of the Akron-Canton Advocacy Alliance. And today we are really fortunate to be able to talk to a champion for our businesses, Representative Jack Daniels of Ohio House District 32, a place he likes to lovingly call Upper Canton, Lower Akron. Welcome, Representative.
Hi there. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it very much.
And no worries. And John Rizzo is also with us today, our vice president for the Akron-Canton Advocacy Alliance. And we're going to talk a little bit about policy today, and particularly about an issue that we think has resonance for a lot of companies. But before we do that, Representative Daniels, just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, how you had the seizure, decide to want to get into elected office. Just give us a sense of sort of where you came from on all this.
Sure. Well, believe it or not many people believe me when I say this, but it's true. I've actually wanted to be in the Ohio legislature since I was in high school.
Huh.
I've always had a really deep belief that state government is how this country runs. And the more we can focus our energies on state and local government, I think the more we'll succeed as the republic that we were designed to be. So I think I call it smart enough. I was smart enough not to want to do that as a lifelong career. Uh, and at a pretty young age, I started a trucking company, um, and I owned that all the way up until actually last year, the fall of 2025. I sold Kendall Transport. So I've been in private industry my whole life. I've always been around government and an active participant in local government. I had an appointment. I was appointed to a career tech school board for a few years, so I had a little experience there. And then as my nest emptied, the kids were grown and gone. I decided to start getting involved and start working towards getting into state government. And the first step I did was ran for city council in New Franklin in Southwest Ohio, or Southwest Summit County, and served about 13, 14 months there, something like that, and then was appointed to this position in April of 2024. So I've been in politics about 3 years, something like that.
So you've not had to go through an election cycle yet, then, have you? Or did you?
I did.
Okay.
So I got appointed in 24, and then I was on the ballot in the end of
Into
24,
24, right.
and now I'm on the ballot again at the end of 26
Right.
for my what will be my second term. I'm what they call a red shirt freshman. So
I love
I
it.
got
I love
I
it.
got an extra 8 months, which was actually really beneficial. I got to see two different leaderships here in the state house because state government, as federal government does too, the House of Representatives really is a function of the leadership process. And there was a lot of dysfunction in the last General Assembly and a very low productivity rate. We didn't pass many bills in the last GA. So then I got to contrast and compare that to where we're at now. And we are running circles around many of the previous few General Assemblies. Luckily, we've got some of the drama that we had here in the House with Larry Householder and all that stuff is behind us, and we're in a good position moving forward.
So, I wanna jump into the R&D tax credit in a second here, but I did wanna ask the question. I mean, there's lots of folks who could be listening to this who are currently business owners and might have that desire to try to have an impact on a even bigger stage beyond their own business. Ju How
Mhm.
have you found the transition, and was it what you thought it was going to be?
I get that question a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of people ask, "What surprised you?" First, I think a piece of advice that I'd like to give other business owners is you don't have to run for elected office to have an impact.
Wow.
A lot of times, those of us in the legislature, we need support. And when I say we need support, it's not just going and voting for us. It's not just writing us a check. Obviously we have political campaigns to run, but it has to do with coming to the state house and testifying on bills. And this R&D bill is a great example of it. You know, this one, I'm working on some other stuff that has to do with municipal income tax collection, which some businesses it's a big deal to, some businesses it's not. But like it is a big deal to the realtors. So I gave a speech to the realtors last week, and I said, come and call your rep throughout the state, come to Columbus, testify in committee, and make sure your voice is heard because it matters. Not a lot of people do that. It's like there's a small little clique of people that come and testify, and they're mostly lobbyists or work for lobbyists. But when real business people from the real world community throughout Ohio come to Columbus and testify, I can tell you that representatives pay attention. So there's definitely paths besides running for office, but you're welcome to run for office. It is very different. Everything moves slower. Um, and I think that's by design. I still haven't really decided what the biggest surprise that I've had when I got here is, but it definitely functions completely different than a private business.
Well, and as you said, I think and alluded to, well, it should, right? Because I think the whole point of having government take a little longer, and I know business people get
Right.
frustrated, it doesn't move as fast, is because you got to look at all sides of the issue. You got to understand what you're affecting because, we've seen policy making made, done sort of reactively and reflexively without a lot of thought. And that doesn't always work out either.
That's correct. I was told early on, and I still think this is very true. Legislation that is written for just a single issue or a single crisis usually turns out to be bad legislation.
Yeah.
So that's reactionary. You use the perfect word. Um, Now, that doesn't mean that we don't pass legislation to correct problems and correct issues, but we have to make sure they get vetted. We have to make sure they get talked through. Another thing that's really popular in this process down here is for a good idea to take more than one general assembly. So that,
Mhm.
that's a slow process because every general assembly is 2 years. You've got two budget cycles in there, the capital budget, which we're working on now, and then at the beginning of the next general assembly, we'll start on the operating budget. um, but there's different points through those cycles where it's a better opportunity to push for certain things, especially if those things have appropriations, money tied to them.
Yep.
So yeah, the slow isn't always bad.
So, we've appreciated working with you on a number of issues and just appreciate the practical approach you take to things. So let's talk about this R&D tax credit. And John, I don't know if you want to give any background on this a little bit in terms of what got us here, but I think it's important to understand what it is, what it isn't, and how it sort of fits in our overall desire to see Ohio be competitive and be successful.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And just coming at policy issues generally from a Chamber of Commerce economic development perspective, there's various tools at the state level that really incentivize behaviors that are pro economic growth and pro business. The R&D tax credit being one of them. In the last operating budget, there were some changes made to thresholds for the commercial activity tax that really kind of pigeonholed the state's R&D tax credit that caught our attention, and to the credit of Representative Daniels, him and his colleague Jim Thomas, who have really taken an ownership role in advancing House Bill 756. Generally speaking, Ohio's research and development tax credit is a non-refundable credit equal to 7% of the amount by which a business's current year qualified research expenses, or QREs, in Ohio exceed its average R&D expenses over the preceding 3 years. The credit is used to offset a company's commercial activity tax liability, or their CAT tax liability, and any unused credit can be carried forward for up to 7 years. The way it's written as a tool, as an incentive for R&D, um, diminishes over that 4 year span. And when we look at other tax credits of a similar ilk across not just the country, but at the federal level, Ohio's is less competitive and less attractive. And so when I mentioned that there were changes made to the commercial activity tax thresholds in the last operating budget, that change that I'm specifically referring to is it raised the threshold to $6 million. And while that's a great step in the right direction for the business community, the unique problem that created for Ohio's R&D tax credit is that our credit is leveraged solely against a company's commercial activity tax liability. So the same 92 or 3% of businesses that no longer have to pay the CAT tax after the last operating budget, that same 92 or 3% of companies can no longer utilize the state level R&D tax credit. And so that's just a little bit of background on kind of how we got here and why we're talking about House Bill 756.
And that's what started that's what started the discussion with us was, hey, this credit doesn't have any value anymore because of the cat tax.
So, Representative Daniels, I mean, with respect, right? I mean, you run a trucking company, and this is an R&D tax credit. Isn't this just for technology companies?
It's not. And actually, I wish I would have understood this more as a business owner. Um, I can't remember how many years, probably 15 years ago, 10 or 15 years ago, I did a bunch of research on compressed natural gas for our trucks. And I had a local
Mhm.
truck that I spent I probably spent about $125,000 retrofitting it so that it was a diesel and natural gas, compressed natural gas combined unit. And uh, that would have most certainly worked for this. So there are a lot of ways this could apply to businesses that aren't highly technical, um, even a trucking company.
Well, and I guess it's the bottom line. It's right. Things that you're doing to improve the way your business operates, the way your business delivers, the way you consider deliver to your customers. It's a fairly broad definition of R&D that could really help a lot of businesses.
Sure. And from a state perspective, you know, probably my favorite slogan that I've heard with regards to R&D is where R&D is spent, jobs follow. It's probably one of the most healthy things that a business can do for itself and for its industry. So when you take a community like the Akron-Canton area, where we have the polymer cluster, we have a bunch of like-minded like products, I guess, companies. For us to incentivize R&D in the Akron-Canton area is going to incentivize manufacturing staying in the Akron-Canton area. And there are other, there's the aeronautical hub in Southwest Ohio in the Dayton Springfield area. Same thing. So where you have that R&D activity happening, you're going to see more businesses that are gravitate to that area where that activity is happening. So it's a healthy place for government to not only offer an incentive but make it a shiny incentive. And I think that's one of the problems with Ohio's is that when a CEO is doing a contrast and compare of states, and they're looking at 6 different states, it's kind of important for ours to be at the top of the list because while the CFO, and the people managing the tax bill and that kind of stuff, they're in the back office. The CEO is sometimes needs some shiny stuff put in front of them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So having an aggressive credit um, is where we get the bang for our buck.
Well, and I think it's interesting, 25 years ago, in the economic development space, people were looking around for different places to be or different opportunities. You had a lot of time to react to these things. You'd share information, you'd share backgrounders, you'd give them the details. In today's environment, a lot of times folks have already made their decision based on already selecting down to a number of places that have the things that they think they need. So I think, as you said, having the ability to sort of have information out there about this is available, it's competitive. You might not even get into the first cut to give your ideas if you don't sort of hit these minimum thresholds in R&D.
Correct. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about there's sort of two levels to this, right? So the first level, John, you talked about was making sure that our credit is actually valuable because of the change in the cat ceiling and all that kind of stuff. So maybe talk about the bill in terms of what's in it, what provisions you're sort of putting in it, and then there's a second piece, Representative Daniels, you just mentioned around how competitive our credit is versus other states. Can you talk about the components and how you're trying to sort of go after this legislatively?
So for 756, which is the current bill sitting in House Ways and Means Committee that Representative Daniels and Thomas have sponsored, that bill's rather straightforward. So it looks at the state level R&D tax credit and it provides taxpayers with the ability to leverage the existing 7% credit against other tax liabilities that they have. So right now, it's exclusively leveraged against the commercial activity tax liability that the taxpayer carries. 756 again would open that up to other things like, for example, taxes owed on business income. And that really, that piece, this kind of fundamental aspect of the credit is much more consistent with what we find not just at the federal level with the federal credit, but in other states, all 32 of them that have them.
And our goal is to start talking now. So, like he said, 756 is pretty simple. Um, we'd like to start talking about future legislation. Like to start building a plan around what direction we want to push that ball, and when we want to do it. These things take teamwork. I'm just a representative. Jim Thomas is just a representative. We're the ones that can do the introduction, but we need people behind us. And the Greater Akron Chamber and the Akron-Canton Advocacy Alliance have been huge assets. You guys brought these ideas to me, and that's again, that's how the business community can get involved in the legislative process. Um, and now we need to kind of coalesce around what are our goals, and then I like to say politics is the art of what's possible.
Right.
Um, we need to make sure that the goal that we're trying to attain is attainable, and then build the next piece of legislation around that. So if you got any listeners to this podcast who are passionate about R&D tax credit and understand it, we ask that they get involved and help us understand how it impacts them individually so that we can, move forward on the next piece.
And as you talk about making Ohio's John, you said you looked at 32 other states. Where do we fit in terms of competitiveness of this tax credit versus others? And I guess, I know there isn't a second piece of legislation yet. We're sort of focusing on the first piece, but where do you want to take us as you think about the opportunities, or as you said, Representative Daniels, what's possible?
So just a quick comparative analysis of Ohio's against the federal government and the other states that have it. Ohio's way towards the bottom. There's a couple different reasons why there's various elements to these credits, both in terms of how much they're worth. So Ohio's is 7% of qualifying expenses, again, over a 3-year average. Uh, the federal government, for example, is 14%. Other states are even higher. In Ohio, if you don't claim the credit, you can carry that value forward for up to 7 years. The federal government is 20 years. Other states are indefinite.
Hmm.
In some states, you can buy and sell these credits where there's whole micro economies around the buying and selling of these credits when a taxpayer decides to not use them for one reason or another. These are, this is another thing that Ohio's credit does not allow. So there's a couple different areas in which, if there's agreement on wanting to be more aggressive on how we as a state incentivize R&D activity from a policy perspective, there's several different avenues in which we could become more competitive to other states, but also just more attractive to industry itself.
So, Representative Daniels, where are we in the process? It sounds like we've got a bill number. It's been introduced. It's sitting at
Yep.
committee.
Yep, it's sitting in committee. It's sitting in the Ways and Means Committee, and we're very lucky in the Akron-Canton area that we have me on the Ways and Means Committee, which is everything to do with tax goes through the Ways and Means Committee. And the chair of Ways and Means is Representative Bill Romer, who is from Richfield in Summit County. And Jim Thomas is also, yeah, Jim Thomas is my co-sponsor on this, is also on the Ways and Means. So we've got a good group of people in the Ways and Means Committee. A lot of when you're carrying a bill like this, a lot of the job is to help your colleagues understand it. It's usually less about fighting with them about what's right and what's wrong, and it's a lot more of, let me help you wrap your head around what this does, what it costs the state, what it costs businesses, how it can benefit business, and really just education. So that's the first step. Really, is getting through the Ways and Means Committee. While bills are being entertained by committees, leadership is also paying attention. Of course, then the Senate would have to deal with it. If we get it passed out of the Ways and Means Committee and we get it to the House floor and we pass it, then it's got to go over to the Senate. So while we're doing the committee work, we're also kind of doing a little bit of a ground game. to talk to others throughout the legislature to make sure they know what R&D tax credit is, because there's not a, I mean, there are a lot of business people down here in office, but there are a lot who are not. So we need to get to them and help make sure they understand what it is.
Well, with Chair Romer, I mean, I think, one of the good parts about that is he's not only, an accountant's accountant, but he's also, a kind of a working man's, I don't know, he can help explain it to people in a way they can really get it. So it's a nice combination with the 2
You
of
are
you
exactly
and
right.
Representative Romer. So we're that's a very fortunate place to be. So tell me, you talked earlier about testimony, and you talked earlier about how businesses can get engaged. Describe that process if businesses are interested in learning more about this bill, or if they want to get engaged to bring their perspective, because I think so many folks get, all sort of worried about, oh, I'm going to give testimony to a committee. That must be a really tough process. It's really just about sharing your stories, right?
It really is. And let me give you a couple of tidbits. So if you go to the ohiohouse.gov, you can search legislation. You can search it by keyword. It's literally ohiohouse.gov/legislation/search, but a Google search will get you to the right spot too. Um, and you don't have to necessarily talk to our office. You can look and see if there are bills that you're interested in, and then when you see bills that you're interested in, you'll see the sponsor. So, for instance, this was me and Representative Jim Thomas from Stark County. We're the ones carrying it. So then you reach out to the office and make your name be known to the office that you have an interest in that legislation, and that if there's ever testimony needed, you'd be willing. And you don't necessarily have to come in person. So there's a lot of testimony that is provided that's written only. You can do as simple, like I have another bill that's going to be in the transportation committee today, and it's about online verification of car insurance. We have some of the weakest laws in the state of Ohio about making sure somebody's insured. So what I did was I reached out actually on Facebook and said, "Hey, do I have any friends that have been hit by an uninsured motorist that would be willing to write a letter telling their story?
Hmm.
And if you'd be willing, you could come to Columbus and give your speech in person." And I did get a few people that wrote letters and told their stories. So that's kind of how the process works.
Yeah, it's so important. We tell folks all the time, as you said earlier, Representative, showing up is half the game in terms of showing legislators that you care about something. Because for you to take the time to show up or to write your letter or to provide the information, that's a differentiator right there. And it shows our legislators that there are people paying attention and that these are legitimate issues that have to be addressed.
Correct. And we get a ridiculous amount of spam like email. So there'll be a trade group, an industry group, a social group, whatever, that has an issue that they don't like or they like. And we will just get flooded. But we can tell that they're all coming from the same source.
Right.
We can also tell when we get an individual phone call or an individually written email from a constituent, or it doesn't necessarily have to be in my district, and just be in my area or anywhere in the state where they have the heart and soul to take that step. That's the showing up part, because they have to fight through all of that spam to really get to us, and we really appreciate it. Those genuine communiques are very valuable to us.
Yeah, gotta get engaged to get the things you need to get done to make it a better place for your business. So, is there a hearing scheduled for this bill yet, Representative, or is there a testimony process for this bill yet? Or are you still in the early stages?
Not yet. We did the first step is what's called sponsor testimony, and that's usually a pretty softball process. That's where the two sponsors, so me and Representative Jim Thomas, got in front of the committee. Even though we're on the committee, we had to go in front of the podium. So that's where we're at right now. So now we start to work, and of course, we're in an election year, which means we run every other year. So every other year is a little less productive. We have to take a lot of time off. We're working on capital budget. So we're always going in 12 or 13 different directions. So now it's just trying to figure out a way to strategize to get our next hearing.
So, John, folks who may have an interest in this issue or other issues, they can certainly kind of keep track of them through the Akron-Canton Advocacy Alliance as well, or maybe even get involved with that work. How do folks find out more about that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely to the representative's point, they could always reach out to their elected officials or those across the region. But the African Advocacy Alliance itself will be posting stuff not just on our website, but including information in our general advocacy update newsletters. And especially if we get to a point where there's going to be a hearing that includes House Bill 756, there's going to be a group of us that plan to go down and testify. And so we'll have the paperwork needed to file that, whether it's written or in person, but there's going to be plenty of opportunities to engage in the coming weeks and months. It's just akroncanadvocacy.org. There's information not just about the Alliance, how we're comprised and what we do, but the legislation that we're tracking as well. So that House Bill 756 included. There's links to the bills themselves, analysis documents, different testimonies provided by us or our partners. So there's a pretty good repository online that's available to anyone.
Right. Well, as we wrap up here, because I know you've got a busy day today legislatively, Representative Daniels. I mean, other things that you want to mention that you're working on, or things that people should be aware of that their government is hard at work trying to do to make things better for businesses.
Yeah. Well, I have, include in addition to being a business owner and having a big interest in business issues here at the state house, I also have a big interest in local government efficiency. There are some problems that we have in Ohio that it's complicated how we got here. It has to do with the fact that we're the first state admitted in the Northwest Ordinance. Anybody that's a history geek can do a little bit of reading, and that fact, going all the way back to 1789, has created a multi-layering system of inefficiency and what I call the pancaking of taxation in the state. Ohio, I hate to admit this because it makes me sad, but we are the highest taxed red state, and we have a very competitive income tax, very competitive cat tax, business taxes. We have actually very competitive sales taxes. Where we are not competitive has to do with local government taxes. Win one for the Gipper. Those of a certain age will know what that means.
Yeah.
Um, and that is a bill that me and Representative Mike DeVilla from Cuyahoga County are encouraging municipalities to merge. We have somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 villages in the state of Ohio with less than 200 people in them. That's a recipe for inefficiency.
Mm.
And there are numerous other examples of that. We just have a lot of forms of government in the state of Ohio. So what we're trying to do is provide a carrot to incentivize those governments to start thinking about reducing the size of local government, literally. A second one that also has to do with efficiency at local government. This bill has not dropped yet, but we estimate somewhere between 70 and 150 million dollars per year is spent collecting municipal income tax. So let me say that again. It's not the tax that's that much. Tax is significantly more than that. We're spending that much money collecting it. And that's because every municipality has its own tax department, and every city and village, um, they have their own office to collect. It's also very confusing for business owners, especially business owners that travel around the state doing business in different areas. They have a very complicated job filing their local income tax. And it's something that when businesses move here from other states, it's one of their biggest surprises is the complexity of our municipal income tax. So we're working on a proposal to what we want to do is centralize the collection so that the business owner can do their withholding and file that with one entity somehow, some way. We don't have all the answers yet, but we're working on them. So that's probably my biggest wheelhouse is trying to focus on efficiency of government.
A very worthwhile quest. I know so many business owners get confused and frustrated with that process. So, Representative Daniels, appreciate you focusing on that. I mean, I guess born out of your own experience, right? I mean, you see how it
Yeah,
impacts business
100%.
owners. You got to figure it out. So, as we close up here, I always love to ask folks. maybe for one of their jams, a place in their where the area here that they frequent would like to let us know about. And so I'm going to have you focus on some place or two in Upper Canton, Lower Akron, as you like to say.
I do. I love to say I'm from LA and then say, actually, I'm from UCLA, Upper Canton, Lower Akron. Well, I have, I knew about this question ahead of time. I'll be honest to the listeners. So the first thing that I would do, I represent all of the Portage Lakes, and I love the Portage Lakes. I love the boat. I also love the Akron-Canton Airport. So if I had a weekend and I had some nice weather like we've got today, and had a friend, I would probably call a friend, maybe somebody that lived in Michigan, and I would suggest that they get on a Breeze flight or a Allegiant flight or United Airlines and fly to the beautiful Akron-Canton Airport, which I think is one of the best airports in the country. And then I'll pick you up and we'll go rent a pontoon boat and we'll go out on the Portage Lakes and enjoy the sunshine. And hopefully we'll have a driver so that we could stop at one of the establishments and have a beverage and hopefully have a salad where we can have some of our local white French dressing that for those of us in the UCLA area might not realize that you don't have to go more than 10 or 15 miles away and they don't know what you're talking about when you say white French dressing. So
Yep.
that's my day in a nutshell. I think we've got a beautiful piece of the world. I think the combination of us being 30 to 50 miles away from metropolitan Cleveland, 100 miles from Columbus, 100 miles from Pittsburgh, but yet having two municipalities, Canton and Akron, that sweet spot between the two is where my district is. And I think it brings a lot. I think we have a nice blend of rural, urban, suburban, exurban, recreational areas. It's a beautiful place to live, and I love it with all my heart and soul.
It's a beautiful day in UCLA with Representative Jack Daniels. So I appreciate that. Being from Philly, two things perplexed me about this place when I got here. Sweetest day, which I had never heard of before I got to Ohio. And the second was the stuff that you call white French, which is just sort of ranch dressing to me. I don't know. I don't quite get it. So
Oh, you haven't had good white French. We'll have to go have dinner sometime, Steve, because
I got it.
yeah, good white French. It has nothing to do with French, but it also doesn't have much to do with ranch. So,
There you go.
and we have the greeting card industry in Northeast Ohio, so
Yes,
that's
yes.
our sweetest day
You
that we
gotta
do.
invent those holidays anytime you can, right? So, well, I appreciate Representative Daniels your time, but most of all, your efforts on behalf of our business owners and to create an environment here that's gonna sort of attract folks and grow our region. You've been a great ally for the things that we've been trying to push for our business owners, and just so appreciate your decision to sort of not just kind of retire off into the sunset on that pontoon boat, but to really spend your time trying to make this a better place for our businesses. So, thank you for that, sir.
Well, thank you, and the Greater Akron Chamber and the Canton Chamber and the Akron-Canton Advocacy Alliance have all been real assets to me as a legislator. It really, I've been a member of the Akron Chamber many, many, many years. So then for me to kind of flip roles and be in government to lean on you for assistance has been very helpful. So thanks for your advocacy.